Then on Sports Central, we go over our first team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Georgia Bulldogs, the back-to-back national champions. This is the top power in college football right now. This team was a perfect 15-0 in the 2022 season, and looking forward to 2023, this team is once again considered one of the main contenders. And so that said, what are the odds that this team does win their third straight national championship in 2023? How good will this team be in 2023? We'll be talking about that here today. We're going to be previewing the roster of this team and predicting their schedule game by game in this video. Let's get started looking at a quick recap of 2022. This team 15-0, just an outstanding season. And it's not too often that you see teams go back-to-back in college football, and this was one of those situations. Georgia was just too good in 2022. They beat Oregon in week 1, and from the start, we knew this team was outstanding. They beat Oregon 49-3 in the first game of the season. They were dominant to start off the season. 3 outstanding wins. They beat Samford and then South Carolina 48-7 in week 3. And then they had their wins over Kent State and Missouri. This was kind of when people started to question Georgia a bit because the Kent State and Missouri games were a bit closer than expected. And this defense didn't look quite as good as, say, they were in the 2021 season when they were extremely dominant. But this team came back. They dominated Auburn and Vanderbilt. And a lot of those questions were quickly silenced. They beat Florida. Then after their bye week, they beat Tennessee, which was a huge win there, 27-13. Tennessee at that point in the season was hot, and they beat them 27-13. They beat Mississippi State the next week 45-19, beat Kentucky by 10, and took care of Georgia Tech 37-14. So, yeah, this team was outstanding in the regular season, 12-0, and then they went into the SEC championship and beat LSU 50-30. It was a dominant performance. Yeah, LSU scored 30, but Georgia was dominant from start to finish in that game. There was no doubt that they were going to win that one. And then they beat Ohio State in the College Football Playoff Peach Bowl, the semifinal, 42-41. And that was truly your national championship there. I mean, Ohio State, the way they played right up next to Georgia, kept it close. I mean, it was an outstanding game. And in the end, we saw Georgia just completely destroy TCU in the national championship at 65-7. I still can't get over that final score. I mean, Georgia just that was brutal domination from start to finish in that national championship game. So from start to finish, a memorable and outstanding season for the Bulldogs, 15-0, and once again, national champions. But looking forward to 2023 now, your roster preview going into next season. So Stetson Bennett, he's gone. He is in the NFL now, and that's one of the more notable losses, even though I do feel like this team will be just fine with any other quarterback in that situation. Just because, I mean, Stetson Bennett, he was an outstanding quarterback, but he wasn't, say, your super influential player like Joe Burrow was with LSU back in 2019, or you could say that with most quarterbacks who win national championships. But the truth is about Georgia is it wasn't just the quarterback. It was the entire team. This was an extremely well-balanced team. Defensively, they were brutal last season. That's how it's been the last couple of years. And offensively, it was all around. It was not just the quarterback situation. And so, yeah, losing Stetson Bennett is a tough loss, and things are going to be different. But I do think that this team will be just fine with Carson Beck taking over as the primary starter at quarterback. It looks like it's going to be him. You also got Brock Vandagriff, who is in contention. But I would assume at this point it's going to be Carson Beck based on what reporters are saying. So you do lose Kenny McIntosh. That is going to be one of your more significant losses. Last season, you put up 1,300 yards of offense, 12 touchdowns. That will be a tough one. But at least you got some great depth in the backfield. You got Dejon Edwards coming back, Kendall Milton coming back as well. So your second and third in the backfield are returning. Edwards put up nearly 900 yards last season, and Milton just over 600. The receiving core, you also got Brock Bowers coming back, tight end, one of the best tight ends in the country, if not the best. I mean, he put up over 1,000 yards of offense last season and 10 touchdowns as a tight end. Those are some outstanding numbers that most receivers in their positions could only hope to get. So Brock Bowers is a major notable player for this team, and that's going to be huge having him coming back. Ladd McConkey is also coming back, the top wideout, and the second in receiving, putting up nearly 900 yards last season. You do lose Darnell Washington, your second tight end. So that's a notable loss there. But otherwise, I mean, this team, I mentioned it at the start, this is a team with outstanding depth, and that's why this team is expected to be so good once again in 2023. it's the depth of this team. They're losing some of their key players, especially on defense. You're losing 1 on the D-line, 3 linebackers, and 3 in the secondary. But this team is rebuilding easily with the recruiting, and the depth is already great. This team's got experience coming back. And so that's why there's so much confidence in this team for them to be once again a contender in 2023. And it brings to the question, what are the chances for a three-peat in 2023? It is a very reasonable possibility that Georgia could win their 3rd straight national title. I mean, it's based on the talent of this team, this defense. If the recruits live up to what they're expected to be, this team should have no issues being a major contender once again in 2023. But looking at your transfer portal and recruiting now going into next season, this team does lose a few of their key players. Donnie Mitchell is off to Texas, receiver, but you do have a couple coming in, Rara Thomas from Mississippi State, and then Dominic Levitt from Missouri. You lose Eric Gilbert to Nebraska. Jacob Hood, offensive tackle, is also off to Nebraska. Griffin Scroggs is in the transfer portal, and you lose Bear Alexander to USC. Otherwise, MJ Sherman's off to Nebraska. Tresman Marshall, linebackers, off to Alabama. Ryan Davis, linebackers, off to UCF. You bring in Smoke Buey from Texas A&M, defensive back. Jaheim Singletary, he is off to Arkansas, and then Marcus Washington is also in the transfer portal. So a few players leaving this team in the transfer portal, but you also add a couple, and based on the recruiting, I mean, 2nd in the country, 2nd in the SEC, 5 stars coming in, 17 4-stars. Not concerned one bit about the depth of this team. I mean, it's only getting better. And that said, on the future forecast meter, I got this team at a 10 out of 10, basically saying, yeah, there's an 100% chance that this team is going to have a positive future. And I think this team is, I mean, they've already been great. I mean, it's pretty much a given that this team is going to remain as one of the main contenders in college football for many years to come. I'd be shocked if this team fell off anytime soon. And that said, let's look at your schedule now going into next season. So you got UT Martin in week 1, Ball State in week 2, 2 easy games, 2 easy wins to start off the season there, and then South Carolina to kick off your conference schedule. Then you got UAB coming to town, Auburn on the road for your first road game of the season to finish out September, and then Kentucky on the 7th. You got Vanderbilt on the road, Florida in a neutral location. That game's in Jacksonville. Then you got Missouri at home, Ole Miss at home, Tennessee on the road, and then Georgia Tech on the road to end off the season. So you do have your last 2 games of the season on the road of the regular season at least. Your senior day is against Ole Miss on November 11th. Otherwise, it's a pretty normal, straightforward schedule. And that said, looking at September here, your first 4 games, UT Martin and Ball State, 2 easy wins there. You should have no issues. And same with that UAB game. Really, I think you win all 3 of those games by at least a couple of touchdowns. South Carolina. Now, this is a game where I could see it. I think Georgia wins it by 10 to 17 or so. I think they win it by around a couple of touchdowns. But I will say I think it's going to be close. I think South Carolina puts up a fight there. Yeah, it's in week 3. It's at home. You would think they wouldn't have any issues, but South Carolina is actually promising looking into 2023 here. They could be a dangerous team once again, looking at how much they improved over the course of the 2022 season. I do think South Carolina could be pretty good this upcoming season. So I do think I'll put that game in yellow, but I do want to favor Georgia there for sure. I would be stunned if the Bulldogs lost that game, but I'm still going to put it in yellow. So 4-0 start to the season, shouldn't really have any issues. The next 4 games, Auburn on the road, should take care of them. It is a road game, so I consider putting it in yellow, but I do think you beat them by 17 or so, maybe even more than that. Kentucky at home. Now, Kentucky's an interesting team. Devin Leary going in there from NC State. That does bring, I mean, obviously losing Will Levis is huge, but at least you got another talented quarterback in Devin Leary going in there. So Kentucky could be decent, but I do think you win that game by a couple of touchdowns at the least there. Vanderbilt, easy win, and then Florida. Florida's an interesting team. That's a team that really is kind of concerning in the quarterback situation. Graham Mertz, Wisconsin transfer in there. I don't know about Florida going into next season. They're a team that I've got many questions about, so I'm going to favor you there as well. So I think 8-0 is very reasonable for this team, but I'll go ahead and say this as well. I mean, there's one game that I see being a potential trap game for Georgia, and that is the Tennessee matchup in Knoxville in Week 12. I mean, otherwise, I mean, your toughest games prior against Kentucky and then South Carolina maybe, and then Ole Miss. All 3 of those games are at home. Tennessee is the one game that I see being a potential threat for Georgia to lose. I'd honestly be stunned if they lost any game otherwise. And so looking at November, Missouri, easy win. Ole Miss, I think that's also a win, even though it might be closer with it being at home. Ole Miss is a decent team. They should be good once again next season. So I see them keeping it maybe close, but that Tennessee game especially, I actually went back and forth on that one. Knoxville's a really tough place to play. Joe Milton instead of Hendon Hooker this season. I still see Tennessee being a 9 to 11 win team in 2023. So a tough game. Tennessee could win it, but I'm going to favor Georgia there for now in a really close game. That might be one of the games of the year there on November 18th, and then you take care of Georgia Tech to finish out the regular season. So I got this team as a 12-0 team once again in 2023. This schedule looks really good. I mean, if you're a Georgia fan, you got to love this schedule. I mean, you really don't have any tough non-conference games. And I mean, it's Georgia. This is a team that if you go undefeated, and really that's the case for most Power 5 teams anyway. If you go undefeated in the regular season, you're in the college football playoffs. So, I mean, having tough non-conference games to boost your resume can be good. But I mean, for Georgia, I mean, and having 3 easy non-conference games, it just makes it all the more easier to get to the college football playoff. And Georgia is pretty much a lock for me to get into that top 4 at this point. I would be stunned if this team had 10 wins or less in the 2023 season. So that's it. Let's wrap it up for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Georgia. Does this team once again win a national championship in the 2023 season? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.